Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Get your filth off my desk and get out before I have security throw you through the glass doors. The file folder hit Ren's chest with a dull thud, papers scattering across the polished marble floor like dead leaves in a gale. The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating, and punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 45th floor. Ren stood frozen, his breath hitching in his throat, looking down at the scattered documents that represented 6 months of sleepless nights, bleed from the nose dedication, and a brilliance he had fought to hide under a mask of mediocrity. He looked up, meeting the sneering gaze of director Marcus Thorne, a man whose ambition was only exceeded by his incompetence. Thorne was smiling, a cruel twisting of lips that signaled he had finally found the excuse he needed to crush the quiet intern who asked too many intelligent questions. "Did you hear me, boy?" Thorne stepped around his mahogany desk, his expensive Italian leather shoes crunching on Ren's handwritten notes. "You are terminated. Effective immediately. For corporate espionage and gross incompetence." It was a lie so blatant it felt like a physical slap. But in the ecosystem of vain enterprises, truth was a currency only the powerful could afford. Ren, a 23-year-old intern in the R&D perfumery division, was supposedly the bottom of the food chain. Ren clenched his fists at his sides, his nails biting into his palms. "I didn't steal the Formula 9, he said, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a suppressed rage that threatened to boil over. "I corrected it. The original compound was unstable. It would have caused chemical burns. You dare lecture me?" Thorne laughed, a grating sound. He signaled to the 2 hulking security guards standing by the elevators. "Remove him, and make sure he's thrown onto the pavement. Let the rain wash the trash away." Ren's eyes darted to the clock on the wall. 1:58 p.m. He would be here in 2 minutes. "You are making a mistake, Director," Ren said, his voice dropping an octave, losing its frantic edge and settling into a cold calm that made the security guards hesitate. "A mistake that will cost you everything." Thorne scoffed, checking his cufflinks. "The only mistake was hiring a street rat. Get him out. The CEO arrives for the quarterly review in 5 minutes. If this trash is still here when Lord Vane walks in, you're all fired." The guards moved then, grabbing Ren by the arms. The humiliation burned hot behind Ren's eyes, but he didn't struggle. He allowed himself to be dragged toward the glass double doors of the conference room where the entire executive board had gathered to watch the spectacle. He saw the pity in the eyes of the secretaries, the schadenfreude in the eyes of the junior managers. They thought they were watching a lamb being led to slaughter. They didn't realize they were poking a sleeping dragon. To understand why Ron, a genius chemical engineer with a doctorate he kept hidden, was being dragged out of a building like a common criminal, one had to understand the contract. 6 months ago, Ren had saved a life. It was a rainy night in the chaotic backstreets of the district, and a man had been bleeding out in an alleyway, betrayed by a rival syndicate. Ren, coming home from a late shift at a convenience store, hadn't run away. He had stitched the man up with a sewing kit and vodka, hiding him in his cramped apartment for 3 days. That man was Julian Vane, the emperor of the business world. A man whose name made stock markets crash and rival CEOs jump from windows. Ren didn't know who Julian was until the 4th day, when a fleet of black SUVs surrounded his apartment block. He expected to be killed for knowing too much. Instead, Julian had looked at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, intense, possessive, and terrifyingly intelligent, and offered him a deal. Marriage. Julian needed a spouse to secure his inheritance from a traditionalist grandfather and to ward off political marriages from rival families. He wanted someone unconnected to his world, someone brave enough to stitch up a bullet wound without shaking. He wanted Ren. Ren had agreed, but on one condition: he wanted to work. He didn't want to be a trophy spouse kept in a gilded cage. He wanted to work at Vane Enterprises, specifically in their renowned perfumery division, but he wanted to do it on his own merits. "I will enter as an intern," Ren had told Julian in the dark luxury of the Vane penthouse, tracing the scar on Julian's chest. "No one can know who I am. If I fail, I fail. If I succeed, I want it to be because I'm good, not because I'm your husband." Julian had hated the idea. He was a man of absolute control, a predator who protected what was his with lethal force. The thought of Rin being ordered around by middle management nobodies made his blood boil. But he had relented, because he couldn't deny Rin anything. 6 months, Julian had whispered, pressing a kiss to Rin's forehead that felt like a brand. You have 6 months to prove your point. But if anyone touches you, if anyone disrespects you, the deal is off, and I will burn the department to the ground. Today was exactly 6 months. And Julian was never late. The elevator dinged. It wasn't the soft chime of the employee elevators. It was the heavy, resonant gong of the private executive lift that opened directly into the boardroom foyer. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. Thorn, who had been busy kicking Rin's scattered papers toward the trash bin, froze. The color drained from his face, replaced by a mask of obsequious panic. He adjusted his tie, smoothed his hair, and signaled frantically for the guards to hurry up. Get him out the fire exit. Thorn hissed. Too late, Rin murmured, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom blasted open. They didn't just open, they were flung wide with a force that rattled the glass walls. Julian Vane walked in. He was a vision of terrifying elegance. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than the building they were standing in. His black hair was swept back, revealing a face carved from marble and cruelty. But it was his aura that silenced the room, a suffocating pressure that made the air feel heavy, triggering the primal instinct in every human brain to freeze or flee. Behind him trailed his personal assistant and a team of legal counsel, but Julian stopped alone in the center of the room. He didn't look at the board members who had risen to their feet in respect. He didn't look at Thorn, who was bowing so low his nose nearly touched his knees. His eyes, cold, sharp, and predatory, locked instantly onto Rin. He saw the security guard's hand gripping Rin's bicep. He saw the papers on the floor. He saw the slight redness on Rin's wrist where the guard had squeezed too hard. The silence stretched, agonizing and brittle. Lord Vane, Thorn stammered, stepping forward with a trembling smile. Welcome. We were just taking out the trash. A minor personnel issue. An intern caught stealing corporate secrets. We handled it efficiently so as not to disturb your. Let go of him. The voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet it carried across the room like the crack of a whip. The security guard blinked, confused. Sir. Julian turned his head slowly. The movement was predatory, like a tiger noticing a gazelle. I said. Julian enunciated, his voice dropping to a terrifying baritone. Take your hand off him before I have it severed from your body. The guard recoiled as if burned, releasing Rin instantly. Rin stumbled slightly, rubbing his arm. Thorn looked between the CEO and the intern, his brain failing to compute the scene. Lord Vane, I assure you, this boy is a liability. Come here, Julian commanded, ignoring Thorn entirely. He held out a hand, palm up. A gesture of invitation. A gesture of devotion. The board members gasped. Julian Vane did not touch people. He was a germaphobe, a recluse, a man who wore gloves to shake hands with prime ministers. Rin sighed, the tension leaving his shoulders. He straightened his cheap, off-the-rack jacket and walked across the room. He didn't walk like an intern anymore. He walked with the grace of someone who shared a bed with a king. Rin stopped in front of Julian. The height difference was significant. Rin had to tilt his head back to look into Julian's eyes. You're late, Rin said softly. The collective intake of breath from the room sucked the oxygen out of the air. Thorn looked like he was about to have a stroke. And in turn criticizing the CEO? It was a death sentence. Julian's cold expression fractured, breaking into a smirk that was both terrifying and devastatingly handsome. He reached out, his large hand cupping Rin's cheek, his thumb brushing over the cheekbone with a tenderness that shocked the onlookers to their core. Traffic, Julian replied, his eyes scanning Rin's face for any sign of real damage. And you are in trouble. Oh, Rin raised an eyebrow. For the alleged espionage? For letting these insects speak to you, Julian growled, his thumb dropping to trace Rin's lower lip. We had a deal, Rin. 6 months. The moment they disrespected you, the masquerade was over. Julian turned then, keeping one protective arm wrapped firmly around Rin's waist, pulling him flush against his side. The intimacy was undeniable. It was a claim of ownership so powerful it made the onlookers avert their eyes. Julian faced the room. The warmth vanished from his face, replaced by the visage of the ruthless tyrant they all feared. "Director Thorne," Julian said. Thorne was shaking so hard his knees knocked together. "Why, yes, my lord. You fired this man?" "Yes. Yes, I did." Thorne seized the lifeline, thinking he could still salvage this. He was insubordinate. He tampered with the obsidian formula. "I was protecting the company, my lord." Julian's laugh was a dark, dry sound. "You fired him for tampering with the obsidian formula?" "Yes." "That is fascinating," Julian drawled, tightening his grip on Wren's waist. "Considering that he created the obsidian formula." Thorne blinked. "What?" "The scent you launched last month. The one that raised our stock by 12%, Julian continued, his voice icy. "You took credit for it, Thorne. But my husband formulated it on our kitchen island 3 months ago while I watched." The word hung in the air. "Husband." It echoed off the glass walls. Thorne's face went gray. The board members exchanged horrified glances. The security guards looked like they wanted to dissolve into the floor. "Husband," Thorne squeaked. "But he wears polyester. He takes the bus. Because he wanted to see if this company had any merit based on talent alone," Julian said, his voice dripping with disgust. "He wanted to see if you were capable of recognizing genius without a name attached to it. Clearly, you are not." Julian looked down at Wren. "Did he touch you?" Wren looked at Thorne. He saw the terror, the pathetic realization that his career, his life, was over. He could have been merciful. But Wren remembered the chemical burn accusations. He remembered the humiliation of being dragged. "He threw my research on the floor," Wren said calmly. "And he told the guards to throw me in the gutter." Julian nodded slowly. The motion was a verdict. "Assistant Chun," Julian called out without looking back. "Yes, sir." A sharp-looking woman stepped forward. "Liquidate Director Thorne's assets. Invoke the breach of contract clause for theft of intellectual property, specifically claiming my husband's work as his own. Ensure he is blacklisted from every industry from here to Antarctica." "Understood, sir." "And the guards?" Chen asked. "Fired. No severance." Julian looked around the boardroom. "This entire department is rotten. You judged a diamond as glass because it wasn't wrapped in velvet. As of today, the perfumery division is under new management." Julian looked down at Wren, his eyes softening again. "What do you think, Director Vang?" Wren smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile that proved he was indeed Julian's match. "I think I'll start by redesigning the lab. It's horribly inefficient." "Done," Julian said. "Now, pick up your papers." Thorne, broken and sobbing quietly, didn't move. "I wasn't talking to you," Julian snapped at Thorne. "I was talking to the board." The 12 most powerful executives in the company scrambled out of their chairs. Men and women in $5,000 suits dropped to their knees, frantically gathering the scattered papers Wren had dropped. They piled them neatly, trembling, offering them to Wren like tributes to a deity. Wren took the stack from a shaking vice president. "Thank you." Julian took the papers from Wren and handed them to his assistant. Then, he swept Wren up into his arms, bridal style. "Julian," Wren gasped, flushing pink. "Put me down. People are watching." "Let them watch," Julian declared, walking toward the exit. "Let them see exactly who they try to throw away. You're done for the day." "It's 2 p.m., Wren argued weakly, though he wrapped his arms around Julian's neck. "I don't care. I'm taking you home. I need to wash the scent of this place off you." Julian paused at the door, turning back to the devastated room one last time. "If anyone speaks a word of disrespect about my husband again, there won't be a firing. There will be a funeral." The ride down in the private elevator was silent, save for the hum of the machinery. Julian didn't put Wren down. He held him close, his face buried in the crook of Wren's neck, inhaling deeply. "You're shaking," Wren whispered, running his hand through Julian's hair. "I wanted to kill him," Julian admitted, his voice muffled against Wren's skin. "When I saw his hands on you. When I saw you standing there looking so small." "I wasn't small," Wren corrected gently. "I was waiting for you." Julian pulled back, his eyes dark with an intensity that made Wren's heart race. "I will never let you out of my sight again. No more secret identities. No more internships. You take your rightful place beside me. Everyone will know that Rincini belongs to Julian Vang." And that Julian Vane belongs to Rincini? Rin teased. Julian didn't smile. He leaned in, his lips brushing against Ren's ear. Body and soul, little genius. Body and soul. The elevator doors opened to the private garage where the limousine waited. The rain was still pouring outside, but Ren knew he would never feel the cold again. He had tamed the storm. Later that evening, the news broke. The stock market wobbled as Vane Enterprises announced a restructuring. Pictures of Director Thorne being escorted out by police were splashed across the tabloids. But the real story, the one that set the internet on fire, was a single, grainy photograph taken by a bystander in the lobby. It showed the ruthless, untouchable Julian Vane carrying a young man in a cheap suit through the rain toward his limousine, shielding him with his own body. The caption was a quote from an anonymous board member. Asterisk, the king found his queen disguised as a pawn. Asterisk. In the master bedroom of the Vane estate, Run lay tangled in silk sheets, watching Julian pour 2 glasses of wine. The firelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. They're calling me a Cinderella story, Ren murmured, looking at his phone. Julian climbed into the bed, taking the phone from Ren's hand and tossing it onto the rug. He loomed over Ren, pinning his wrists to the mattress with effortless grace. They are wrong, Julian growled, his eyes burning with possessive heat. Cinderella needed a fairy godmother and magic. You just needed to be yourself to bring an empire to its knees. Ren arched into Julian's touch as the CEO kissed the pulse point of his throat. And besides, Julian whispered against his skin, Cinderella was innocent. You, my love, are dangerous. That's why I love you. As the rain lashed against the windows, the intern who had been fired and the CEO, who worshipped him, disappeared into the shadows of their own making, leaving the world outside to wonder how they had missed the diamond in the dust. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian destroy his enemies to protect his love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you have revealed your identity sooner or waited for the perfect moment of revenge like Run? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Julian Vane, tall CEO, sharp features, cold blue eyes, slicked back black hair, wearing expensive charcoal 3-piece suit, dominant stance, one arm protectively around Man 2's waist, glaring at camera with murderous intent. Man 2. Run, shorter, messy brown hair, wearing ill-fitting cheap intern suit, looking up at Julian with shock and adoration, slight flush on cheeks. Background is modern glass corporate boardroom, raining outside floor-to-ceiling windows, kneeling executives and background blurring out, papers scattered on polished floor, dramatic cinematic lighting, cool color palette, intense atmosphere.